The office was almost empty when Ethan's store walker looked up from his computer and realized the sun had already disappeared behind the tall buildings outside. The quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the room, and the lights above his desk were the only ones still on. It had been a long day, but Ethan didn't mind staying late. In fact, he had grown used to these quiet evenings. They gave him time to think, time to breathe, and sometimes time to watch the city slowly calm down. But tonight felt a little different. Though he couldn't explain why, Ethan leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. He had been staring at spreadsheets for hours. Numbers blurred together, and the letters on the screen felt heavier than usual. He reached for his coffee cup only to realize it was empty. That didn't surprise him. His mind had been somewhere else all afternoon, somewhere near the desk across from him. Lily Carter worked there. Her chair was empty now. But earlier that day she had been sitting there laughing at something on her phone. Her laugh had always been bright and easy, the kind that made other people smile without even trying. Ethan had noticed that the first week they met, 3 years earlier. Back then, he had just started working at the marketing firm. He was quiet, careful with his words, and focused on doing his job well. He didn't expect to make friends quickly, but Lily had changed that almost immediately, on his second day at work. She had walked up to his desk holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look like someone who forgot to eat breakfast," she said. Ethan looked confused. "I did." She smiled and handed him the extra cup. "And this will save your life." That moment had been simple and small, but it had started everything. From that day on, Lily became part of Ethan's routine. They worked on projects together, shared lunch breaks, and slowly learned each other's habits. Lily liked strong coffee and music from old movies. She hated waking up early, but never missed a deadline. She talked a lot when she was excited and became quiet when something bothered her. Ethan noticed all of it, but he never told her how much those small details meant to him. At first, she was simply a coworker. Then she became a friend. And somewhere along the way, something deeper had grown inside him without warning. Ethan didn't realize it right away. Feelings like that rarely announce themselves loudly. They appear quietly, building in small moments, like the time Lily had stayed late to help him finish a presentation, or the afternoon they walked through the park during lunch because she needed fresh air, or the rainy evening they shared an umbrella while walking to the parking lot. Those memories stayed with Ethan, but he kept them locked inside his thoughts, because Lily always talked about other men, not seriously. But often, sometimes, she would walk into the office on Monday morning and drop her bag on the desk dramatically. "Worst date ever," she would say. Ethan would glance up from his work and ask, "What happened this time?" Then Lily would begin telling the story. One man talked about himself for 2 hours without asking her a single question. Another checked his phone constantly during dinner. One date even spent the entire evening explaining cryptocurrency in painful detail. Ethan listened every time. He laughed at the funny parts, nodded at the frustrating ones, and gave simple advice when she asked for it. But inside, something always twisted a little. Not jealousy exactly, more like quiet disappointment, because every time Lily described another man, Ethan wondered if she would ever notice the one sitting right in front of her still. He never said anything. He valued their friendship. It's too much to risk losing it. The office clock clicked softly as Ethan returned to the present moment. It was already past 6 in the evening. Most employees had left hours ago. Papers were neatly stacked on desks, and the hallway lights were dim. Ethan turned back to his screen and started typing. Again, that was when he heard footsteps. Soft, but quick. He didn't need to look up to know who it was. Ethan. Voice carried the same warm energy it always did. He glanced up and saw Lily walking toward his desk. Her long brown hair was tied loosely behind her head, and she looked slightly rushed, like someone with exciting news. She stopped beside his desk and leaned against the edge casually. "You're still here?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Someone has to keep the company running." She laughed. "That's your polite way of saying everyone else escaped." "Early. Something like that," he replied. Lily held up her phone and waved it slightly. I have news. Ethan closed the document on his computer and turned his chair to face her fully. Good news or strange news? She tilted her head, pretending to think. Possibly both. Ethan folded his arms. Now I'm curious. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. I have a date tonight. The words landed softly, but Ethan felt them immediately. For a brief moment, his heart tightened. Not painfully, just enough to remind him of something he tried not to think about too often. But his expression stayed calm. Oh, he said casually. Anyone interesting? She nodded quickly. His name is Daniel. We started talking online last week. Ethan nodded as if this was normal information. Inside, his mind quietly imagined the man, Daniel, someone Lily had never mentioned before. So tonight's the first meeting? Ethan asked. Yep, Lily said. She pulled out the chair near his desk and sat down. Clearly ready to talk about it, Ethan already knew how this conversation would go. Lily would describe the man, the place they were going, and her small worries about whether the date would feel comfortable or awkward. And Ethan would listen like he always did. Where are you going? He asked. That little Italian restaurant near the river, she said. The one with the lights on the balcony. Ethan knew the place. He had passed it many times during evening walks. It's nice. He said that's what everyone says, Lily replied. Apparently the pasta is amazing. Ethan nodded. Lily studied his face for a moment. You don't sound very excited. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Should I be? Well, you're usually my official date advisor. She joked. He chuckled quietly. Then my advice is simple. She leaned forward. I'm listening. Be yourself, he said. She laughed again. That's the most boring advice ever. It works, though, Ethan replied. Lily sighed dramatically. I hope he's not weird. Ethan shrugged. If he is, at least you'll get a good story out of it. That's true, she admitted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The office felt calm and familiar. Lily looked around the quiet room. I can't believe it's already evening, she said. I still have to go home and get ready. Ethan glanced at the clock. You should probably leave soon then. I know. But she didn't stand up immediately. Instead, she rested her chin on her hand and looked at him thoughtfully. You know something? She said. What? You're really easy to talk to. Ethan smiled slightly. I try. Oh, really? She continued. I tell you everything. He knew that was true, and sometimes that made things harder. But he nodded politely. Well, someone has to listen to your dramatic dating stories. Okay, she protested, smiling. They're not all dramatic. Most of them are. Lily stood up and grabbed her bag from the back of the chair. Okay, I should go before I end up late. Ethan watched her for a second. You'll be fine, he said. She smiled warmly. Thanks. Then she walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around once more. Don't stay here all night, she said. I won't. Ethan replied. She gave a small wave and disappeared into the hallway. The door closed quietly behind her. The office returned to silence. Ethan stared at the empty doorway for several seconds. Then he slowly turned back toward his computer. But he wasn't thinking about work anymore. His thoughts drifted toward Lily. He imagined her getting ready for the date, standing in front of her mirror, choosing a dress, wondering if the evening would be fun or awkward, and across the table from her would sit Daniel, a man Ethan had never met. The thought sat heavily in his chest. For years he had accepted this pattern. Lily dated different men. None of them stayed long in her life. Eventually she would tell Ethan another story about how the date didn't work out. But tonight, something felt different, maybe. It was the quiet office. Maybe it was the way Lily had smiled when she mentioned the restaurant. Or maybe it was the realization that he couldn't keep pretending forever. Ethan leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. 3 years. 3 years of friendship. 3 years of silent feelings. Most people would have spoken long ago. But Ethan had always been careful. He believed patience was safer than risk. Yet patience had never brought him closer to the truth. Slowly, he stood up from his chair. The room felt larger now, emptier. He walked to the window and looked down at the busy streets below. Cars moved in long streams of light. People hurried along sidewalks, heading home or meeting friends, somewhere out there. Lily was probably on her way to that restaurant. Ethan exhaled slowly. A quiet thought crossed his mind. What if tonight was the moment everything changed? He didn't know what the right decision was, but he knew one thing clearly. If he stayed silent forever, Lily would never know how he truly felt. And that idea suddenly felt heavier than the risk of telling her. Ethan walked back to his desk and grabbed his jacket. His heart beat a little faster than usual. He turned off the office light. The room fell into darkness. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan made a decision that frightened him. Because instead of going home, he stepped out into the night with a different destination in mind. And he had no idea that the next few hours might change his life completely. The evening air was cool and crisp as Lily Carter walked along the riverbank toward the Italian restaurant. The city lights reflected on the dark water, casting a soft glow that made the streets feel quieter, calmer, like the world had slowed down just for her. She clutched her small handbag and smoothed down the skirt she had chosen for the date. Tonight, she told herself, she would try to enjoy it. Daniel seemed nice, funny even. He had a way of making her smile in their brief online chats, and she wanted to see if that spark existed in real life. Yet, as she approached the warmly lit restaurant, a strange flutter of unease crept through her chest. Something felt different tonight. She couldn't explain why, but a subtle tension lingered. Like the air was holding its breath. Inside, the restaurant was cozy, filled with soft music and the low hum of conversation. Candlelight flickered across the tables, casting gentle shadows on the faces of couples enjoying their evenings. Lily felt her pulse quicken as she spotted Daniel waiting near a corner table. He stood up when he saw her, a confident smile spreading across his face. "Lily, hi," he said warmly, pulling out the chair for her. She smiled back, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Daniel seemed perfect on the surface, well-dressed, attentive, and polite, but as they settled into their seats, Lily noticed a slight emptiness in the conversation. He was charming, certainly, but something subtle was missing. His stories, though amusing, didn't spark the connection she unconsciously craved. Her thoughts began drifting, flickering to a person she never expected to think about during a date. Ethan, his name surfaced in her mind unbidden, as if the universe was reminding her of what she had long ignored. The thought of him wasn't overwhelming, just persistent, like a quiet echo in the back of her mind. She remembered the way he always listened, really listened, when she talked about her day or her thoughts. The way he noticed the little things, the way she preferred her coffee, the exact spots she liked in the park, the way her hair fell across her face when she concentrated. Unlike Daniel, Ethan had never tried to impress her with stories or charm. He simply existed in her life, patient, attentive, and consistent. And somehow those small, unnoticed details now seemed louder in her memory than Daniel's jokes or anecdotes. Daniel, oblivious to Lily's inner turmoil, continued talking about a recent trip he had taken with friends. He animatedly described a kayaking accident that had left his friend drenched, his voice full of laughter and excitement. Lily smiled politely, nodding at the appropriate moments, but her attention drifted again. Her mind conjured Ethan's image, how he would have told her the story differently, perhaps more thoughtfully, with a humor that didn't try so hard to amuse but instead felt genuine. The contrast hit her sharply. Daniel was nice, she acknowledged that, but Ethan was familiar in a way that brought warmth to her chest. Familiar and safe, yet somehow thrilling in its quietness. Suddenly, the restaurant door opened, and a draft of cool night air swept through the space. Lily looked up instinctively, and her heart skipped a beat. There, standing in the doorway, was Ethan. For a moment, she froze, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. He looked slightly tense, scanning the room until his eyes landed on hers. The world seemed to blur around her, and Daniel's words faded into white noise. Lily's mind raced. Ethan. Here, why? Ethan began walking toward their table, his steps deliberate but cautious. Lily stood up, her hands clutching the back of her chair. Ethan, what are you doing here? She asked, her voice a mix of surprise and curiosity. Ethan stopped a few feet away, taking a slow breath, as if preparing for something monumental. I needed to talk to you, he said quietly, his eyes fixed on hers. Daniel, looking confused, raised an eyebrow. Now, he asked, uncertain. Ethan nodded, his gaze unwavering. Yes, now, he replied. The tension at the table thickened, charged with emotions that had been simmering for years. Lily's chest pounded as she tried to process his sudden appearance. Daniel shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable, but Ethan ignored him. The only person he saw was Lily. I know this is a bad time, he said softly. But if I don't say this tonight, I probably never will. Lily's hands trembled slightly. Her mind raced, trying to grasp the gravity of his words. There was a pause, heavy with anticipation. Ethan's voice broke the silence again. I've listened to every story about every date you've ever had. I always told myself it didn't matter. But the truth is, it mattered more than I wanted to admit. Lily's heart raced faster. The world outside the restaurant, the soft glow of city lights, the flickering candles seemed to fade. All that existed was Ethan and the confession he was making. Daniel's presence became irrelevant, a distant shadow in the corner of her awareness. She barely recognized herself. Her hand instinctively went to her chest as if to steady the rapid beating of her heart. Ethan's words pierced through the walls she had built around her feelings, exposing emotions she hadn't fully understood or acknowledged. For 3 years he had been her friend, her confidant, her anchor in the mundane and chaotic alike. And now, standing before her, he was more than that, vulnerable, honest, and unflinchingly sincere. Ethan continued, his voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. I don't want to keep pretending I'm just your friend. I'm in love with you. Those 4 words hit Lily like a wave. She had never expected this. Not now, not ever. She tried to speak, but found her voice caught somewhere between her throat and her chest. Ethan, she whispered, barely audible. He stepped closer, closing some of the space that had always existed between them, yet carefully leaving room for her choice. Daniel cleared his throat. Sensing the gravity of the moment and realizing that he was intruding on something far more significant than a casual dinner. Okay, I feel like I'm interrupting something here, he muttered. But Ethan didn't notice. His entire focus was on Lily. I didn't come here to ruin your date, Ethan said softly. I came here because I realized something today. Lily's eyes widened, searching his face for the next words. I realized I don't want to keep hiding how I feel, he continued, a faint but sincere smile tugging at his lips. Lily's mind spun. She thought about every casual date she had gone on over the past year, every attempt at connection that felt off, every fleeting smile that lacked the warmth she experienced when talking to Ethan. Suddenly, everything she thought she wanted seemed trivial compared to the honesty standing right in front of her. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. Her mind was racing, her heart caught in a storm of conflicting emotions. Love, surprise, fear, excitement, they all mingled together, intense and confusing. The quiet music and soft clinking of cutlery in the restaurant seemed distant, irrelevant, a backdrop to the monumental shift occurring in her life. Ethan's presence alone demanded attention, commanding her focus in a way that no one else had ever done. For years, he had been the constant, the subtle presence, the person she leaned on without fully realizing the depth of her reliance on him. Ethan's gaze softened, noticing the mix of emotions crossing her face. He wasn't expecting an immediate answer. He didn't ask for her to respond right away. He only needed her to know the truth, to understand the depth of what he had felt silently for years. I'm not asking you to answer tonight, he said gently. I just needed you to know. His vulnerability hung in the air, powerful and undeniable. Lily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, though she wasn't sure if it was relief, fear, or a combination of emotions she had never fully encountered before. Daniel, sensing he was no longer part of the central moment, quietly leaned back. Well, that escalated quickly, he muttered under his breath, almost to himself, though Lily barely registered it. Ethan, however, was unbothered. His world had narrowed to the single point of connection he sought. Lily's heart continued to pound, each beat resonating with the weight of the confession and the potential it carried. The years of unspoken feelings, the patience, the quiet longing all culminated in this precise moment. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping back slightly to give Lily the space she needed. The soft candlelight highlighted the intensity in his eyes, the earnestness that made his words impossible to dismiss. "Sorry for interrupting," he said softly, not with regret, but with the acknowledgement that he had risked everything to be honest. Lily stood frozen, struggling to find her voice. She felt a swirl of emotions, confusion, fear, excitement, but above all, profound awareness of Ethan's presence in her life. His love was real, tangible, and undeniable as Ethan walked toward the door. The weight of his confession lingered in the air. Lily's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, revisiting every small moment, every quiet interaction, every gesture that had gone unnoticed until now. Her heart ached with realization and anticipation. For the first time, she recognized the depth of her feelings, the connection she had overlooked, and the potential for something more profound than any fleeting date. She watched him leave, the soft click of the door marking a pause in time. Outside, the city continued its evening rhythm, but for Lily, the world had shifted. A silent, powerful transformation had begun, and she knew that whatever happened next could change everything. Lily Carter stood frozen outside the restaurant, the cool night air brushing against her face. Her hands clutched her handbag tightly, knuckles white, as she tried to process what had just happened. Ethan Walker had appeared out of nowhere, confessed 3 years of hidden feelings, and left as quickly as he had arrived. The words he had spoken, so simple yet so powerful, in her mind. "I'm in love with you." They weren't words she had expected, not tonight, not ever. And yet they hung in the air, impossible to ignore, impossible to forget. Her heart pounded as she tried to breathe, the city around her moving in its usual rhythm while her world felt paused, suspended in a moment that demanded attention. She thought back to everything she had ever felt around Ethan, the quiet afternoons in the office when he had shared jokes only she understood, the nights when he had stayed late helping her finish a project, the countless moments when he had listened without judgment, without trying to impress her. She had always appreciated his presence, his consistency. But she hadn't realized the depth of what that presence meant until now. The simple, quiet care he had shown over the years was nothing like the excitement of a date or the novelty of a new person. It was real, steady, and it mattered more than she had ever admitted, even to herself. Daniel, the man she had come to meet tonight, remained seated at the table inside the restaurant. He had been kind, attentive, and charming in his own way. But now, apt after Ethan's confession, all of that seemed distant and irrelevant. Lily realized that the dates she had gone on over the past year trying to find something that felt right had been empty because they weren't with the person who mattered most. Her chest tightened as she thought of Daniel sitting there, unaware that the story of her heart was about to shift dramatically. She felt a pang of guilt for leaving him, but it was quickly overshadowed by the urgency of the feelings Ethan had unearthed in her. Her feet moved almost instinctively as she started down the street, her steps quick, fueled by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She didn't pause to think, didn't stop to plan. She only knew one thing. She couldn't let Ethan walk away and leave the unspoken truth hanging between them. She needed to confront the reality of what had just been revealed. Each step brought her closer to him, closer to the man who had quietly shaped so much of her life without her realizing it. Ethan was waiting by the river, the dark water reflecting the city lights and flickering against the pavement. He stood still, shoulders slightly hunched, as if he had just carried the weight of 3 years of emotions into a single moment and didn't know how to release it. His gaze was fixed on the water, though Lily could see him clearly. There was tension in the line of his jaw, a faint uncertainty in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. For a fleeting second, Lily thought he might leave, might walk away, leaving her to regret inaction. But she couldn't let that happen, not now, not ever. Ethan. She called, her voice carrying over the gentle sounds of the river. He turned slowly, surprise and relief flashing across his face. Her heart leaped at the sight of him. "Lily?" he asked, his voice cautious but hopeful. She quickened her pace, closing the distance between them. Her bag swung against her side, her breath coming in short bursts, but she didn't stop. She had to speak, had to make him understand that his risk had not been in vain. "Why did you leave so fast?" she asked as she approached, trying to catch her breath. Ethan gave a small shrug, a faint smile touching his lips. "I said what I needed to say. Then I figured I should let you enjoy your date." His words were calm, almost casual, but Lily could hear the unspoken weight beneath them, the years of quiet longing, the moments of restraint, the vulnerability that he had displayed so openly just minutes ago. She felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest, a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper, something that had been dormant until now. "You really thought I was going to sit there and pretend nothing happened?" she asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan shook his head, a gentle laugh escaping him, tinged with nervousness. "Yes," he admitted, "I did." The honesty in his voice cut through the uncertainty, grounding her, reminding her that everything he had said was real. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The river flowed silently beside them, the city lights flickering across the surface, creating patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Like the universe itself had paused to witness this reunion of unspoken emotions. Lily's mind raced, recalling every small gesture Ethan had made over the years, the way he remembered her favorite coffee order, the way he stayed late to help her, the way he had always been there without demanding anything in return. Those small moments now took on new significance, revealing a depth of care and affection she hadn't allowed herself to fully see before. She realized with a sharp clarity that the emptiness she had felt on every other date was absent here. With Ethan, there was substance, connection, and the potential for something lasting. "I've been in love with you for 3 years, Ethan said quietly, as if speaking it aloud would make it more tangible, more real. Lily's breath caught. 3 years. 3 years of hidden emotions, quiet admiration, and silent longing had led to this moment. She felt a mixture of awe and disbelief, her chest tight with the intensity of realization. "Unbelievable," she whispered, a laugh escaping her, soft and shaky. "That's not usually the reaction people hope for," he said, his tone self-deprecating, but she could see the hope shining in his eyes. "I've always wanted to tell you," he continued, "but I was afraid. Afraid of ruining our friendship, afraid of changing everything between us. Tonight, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore." Lily's heart pounded as she processed his words. She remembered all the times she had felt a strange emptiness after dates. All the nights she had wondered why no one seemed to match the quiet understanding she had with Ethan. It wasn't just comfort, there was warmth, familiarity, a deep-seated connection that she had overlooked. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The realization was overwhelming, yet it felt right, inevitable even. Ethan had risked everything, to be honest, and now the choice was hers to make. Her gaze softened as she stepped closer, closing the physical distance between them. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice gentle, tinged with both frustration and affection. Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and sincere. "I was afraid," he admitted, "but I couldn't stay quiet any longer. You deserve to know." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She was angry, yes, at the lost time, at the uncertainty, at the words left unspoken, but more than that, she was filled with gratitude. Gratitude that Ethan had taken the risk, that he had chosen honesty over fear, that he had put himself on the line for something real. The quiet of the riverbank enveloped them as they stood facing each other. The night air, cool and refreshing, carried the soft sounds of the city. But all Lily could hear was the rapid beat of her own heart. She thought of Daniel still sitting inside, realizing that tonight was no longer about him. She didn't feel guilt, not truly. This was something larger, something more profound, something she couldn't ignore. Every instinct told her to follow her heart, to respond to the man who had silently shaped so much of her life. She reached out, her hand brushing against Ethan's arm, a tentative touch that conveyed more than words ever could. "I've been thinking. Every date I went on, I wondered why it didn't feel right," she confessed softly. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, hope flickering across his face. "And now I realize why," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "because none of them were you." A slow, stunned smile spread across Ethan's face. Relief, joy, and disbelief mixed in his expression as he processed her words. It was the affirmation he had longed for, the answer he had feared might never come. "Lily," he began, his voice husky with emotion, but she silenced him with a gentle shake of her head. "No, let me finish," she said softly. "I didn't understand it before, but now I do. I want you. I've always wanted you. I just didn't realize it until you said what you did." Ethan's chest tightened with emotion, the weight of years of longing lifting in that single moment. He reached out, taking her hands in his, grounding himself in the reality that she was here, that she felt the same way, that everything he had risked was worth it. The river reflected their intertwined silhouettes, the city lights casting long, shimmering patterns across the pavement. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The world around them faded, leaving only the two of them standing there. Finally, acknowledging the truth that had been hidden for far too long, Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest, a gentle glow of hope and excitement that mingled with the relief of understanding, the thrill of connection and the promise of something real. Ethan's voice broke the silence, quiet but full of emotion. "So, what happens now?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his tone, though his eyes sparkled with anticipation. Lily smiled, a mixture of affection, amusement, and certainty. "Now," she said softly, "we start." She took a step closer, closing the remaining distance between them. "We see where this goes, together." Ethan exhaled slowly, a weight lifting from his shoulders, replaced by a lightness, a joy, and an anticipation for what lay ahead.